Hi guys. Okay. The human brain has 100 billion neurons, each neuron connected to 10,000 other neurons. Sitting on your shoulder is the most complicated object in the known universe. Michio Kaku. 3. Your limitless brain. You may be thinking, Jim, I see what you mean about technology. I wouldn't want to live without it, but I do feel more overloaded, distracted, and forgetful than ever. Here's the good news. You were born with the ultimate technology, the greatest superpower. Let's take a moment to acknowledge just how extraordinary your brain is. It generates up to 70,000 thoughts per day. It races with the speed of the fastest race car. Like your fingerprints, it is uniquely yours. There aren't two brains in the universe exactly the same. It processes dramatically faster than any existing computer, and it has virtually infinite storage capacity. Even when damaged, it is capable of producing genius, and even if you only have half a brain, you can still be a fully functioning human being. And remarkable stories about it abound, like the one about the comatose patient who somehow developed a method of communication with his doctor, or the woman who could recall important events by date going back as far as when she was 12 years old, or the slacker who became a mathematical genius after suffering a concussion after a bar fight. None of this is science fiction or the product of a superhero comic. They're just examples of the extraordinary function built into that remarkable machine between your ears. We take so much of that function for granted. Let's think about just what the average person has accomplished simply by being an average person. By the age of 1, you learn how to walk. No simple task considering how many complex neurological and physiological processes are required. A year or so after that, you learn how to communicate through the use of words and language. You learn dozens of new words and their meanings on a daily basis, and kept going so all the way through school. And while you were learning to communicate, you were also learning to reason, to calculate, and to parse an endless number of complex concepts. And all of that was before you read a single page of a book or attended one class. Our brain are what separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom. Think about it. We can fly. We aren't particularly strong or fast. We can climb with the dexterity of some animals. We can breathe underwater. As far as most physical functions are concerned, we're just average, but because of the power of our brains, we are overwhelmingly Earth's most dominant species. By harnessing that incredible mental power, we have created ways to explore the ocean depth. That's like a fish, move tons of ways like an elephant, and even fly like a bird. Yes, the brain is quite a gift. The brain is so complex that we know more about our vast universe than we do about its workings, and we've learned more about it in the past decade than we'd previously learned over the course of human history. And we'll learn even more about it from the time this book goes to press to press to the time it hits the bookshelves. Our understanding of the brain is ever evolving, and we know that what we've learned about it is only a tiny fraction of what there is to be learned. But but what we already know is staggering. So let's take a journey through your limitless brain. Brain is part of the central nervous system, CNS. Similar to the control tower at an airport, your brain acts as its control center, directing all the comings and goings of information, process, and impulses. The brain has three major areas: the brainstem, the cerebellum, and the cerebral cortex. Both the cerebellum and the cerebral cortex starts with cere, Latin for wax, because of its waxy appearance. The brain is made of fat and water, weighs approximately 3 pounds, and facilitates incredible power and ability. The brain stems moderates the basic functions we need to live, such as breathing, maintaining a regular heart rate, impulses to eat or have sex, and our fight or flight responses. It is located at the top of your spine and the base of your skull. Buried deep within the brain, at the back of the brain, the cerebellum is responsible for moderating movements and coordination. There is also increased evidence that it plays a role in our decision making. The cerebral cortex is the largest part of the brain, where the major of our complex thinking, short-term memory, and story simulation take place. It's made up of the occipital, parietal, temporal, and frontal lobes. Our frontal lobes are where most of our thinking takes place, where logic and creativity derive. The brain is split into two halves that are connected by the corpus callosum, which acts like a bundle of telephone wires between the lobes, sending messages back and forth. Right now, you have somehow around 86 billion neurons, also called the brain cells, firing and acting together in concert as you read these words and assimilate the information on these pages. Neural signals are released into the brain and received by neurotransmitters, which then pass the message along to the other neurotransmitters or stop the message altogether if there's the appropriate response. We used to think that we reached our neurological peak in the late adolescence, after which our brains never changed other than to deteriorate. We now know that this is far from the truth. Our brains have the capacity for neuroplasticity, which means that it can be changed and shaped by our actions and by our environments. Your brain is always changing and molding itself to your surroundings and to the demands you place on it. Because our brains are subject to the influence of our genes and environment, we each possess a brain that is entirely unique to us. They're like snowflakes, no two are alike. Each brain adapts to the needs of its owner. Let's look at someone raised in an environment that was full of stressors such as poverty, lack of access to food, and lack of safety. That person will have a very different brain structure than someone brought up in a very comfortable, affluent, well cared for setting. But before you jump to the conclusions that one environment is better than the other and breeds a better function brain, I challenge you to reconsider. As I stated earlier, the brain is capable of being molded and shaped, meaning that at any point anyone can decide to change the way their brain functions. While it's easy to assume that the individual who grew up in a more stressful, unsupportive environment may not wind up reaching their full potential due to their brain's development, under those circumstances, growing evidence suggests those people are able to thrive and reach new levels of success due to the mindset they are forced to develop in such a situation. Based on the number of successful people who overcome trouble upbringings, it may be that a difficult childhood or challenging upbringing breeds resilience, among other attributes that lead to success. Okay, understanding neuroplasticity. Okay, what we can learn from the brains of London taxi cab drivers. This is a question neuroscientist Eleanor Maguire of University College London posed as she considered the vast amount of information held in the brains of the city's cab drivers, approximately called the knowledge. To earn their license, applicants travel by move through a specific section of the city, a 10-kilometer radius of Charing Cross Station, for 3 to 4 years, memorizing the mazes of 25,000 streets within, as well as the thousands of attractions they supported. Even after this intense study, only about 50% of the applicants passed the series of licensing exams. Perhaps, thought Maguire, those successful had larger than average hippocampi. Maguire and her colleagues discovered that London taxi drivers did indeed have more grey matter in their posterior hippocampi than people who were similar in age, education, and intelligence who did not drive taxis. In other words, taxi drivers had plumper memory centers than their peers. It seems that the longer someone had been driving a taxi, the larger this hippocampus, as though the brain expanded to accommodate the cognitive demands of navigating London streets. The London taxi cab study provides a compelling example of the brain's neuroplasticity, or ability to recognize and transform itself as it is exposed to learning and new experiences. Having to constantly learn new routes in the city forced the taxi cab drivers' brains to create new neural pathways. These pathways change the structure and size of the brain, an amazing example of the limitless brain at work. Neuroplasticity, also referred to as brain plasticity, means that every time you learn something new, your brain makes a new synaptic connection, and each time this happens, your brain physically changes. It upgrades its hardware to reflect a new level of the mind. Neuroplasticity is dependent on the ability of our neurons to grow and make connection with other neurons in other parts of the brain. It works by making new connection and strengthening or weakening, as the case may be, old ties. Our brain is malleable. We have the incredible ability to change its structure and organization over time by forming new neural pathways as we experience, learn something new, and adapt. Neuroplasticity helps explain how anything is possible. Researchers hold that all brains are flexible in that the complex webs of connected neurons can be reordered to form new connections. Sometimes that means the brain compensates for something it has lost, as when one hemisphere learns to function for both, just as there are people who have suffered strokes and have been able to rebuild and regain their brain functions. Those that procrastinate, think excessive negative thoughts, or can't stop eating junk food may also rewire and change their behaviors and transform their lives. If learning is making new connections, then memory is maintaining and sustaining those connections. When we struggle with memory or experience memory impairment, we are likely experiencing a disconnection between neurons. In learning, when you fail to remember something, view it as a failure to make a connection between what you've learned and what you already know, and with how you will use it in life. For example, if you feel that something you've learned is valuable in the moment, but that you will never use it again, you are unlikely to create a memory of it. Similarly, if you learn something but no high reasoning as to why it's important to you or how it applies to your life or work, then it's likely that your brain will not retain the information. It's totally normal to have a memory lapse. We're human, not robots. But if we respond to this lapse in memory, the altitude that I have a bad memory or I'm not smart enough to remember this, then we negatively affect our ability to learn and grow. In other words, the beliefs you might develop in response to forgetting does far more damage than the lapse in memory. That kind of self-talk reinforces the limiting beliefs rather than acknowledging the mistake and reacquiring the information. What does this mean for learning? Plasticity means that you can mold and shape your brain to suit your desires. That something like your memory is trainable when you know how to help your brain receive, encode, process and consolidate information. It means that with a few simple changes to something like your environment, your food, or your exercise, you can dramatically change the way your brain functions. I will share these energy tips in details in chapter 8. Here's the bottom line. Plasticity means that plasticity means that you are learning, and indeed your life is not fixed. You can be, do, have, and share anything when you optimize and rewire your brain. There are no limitations when you align and apply the right mindset, motivation, and methods. Tomorrow, your second brain. So that's it, guys. Bye.